stomping at you like a herd of elephants. It's the Blue Elephant Brigade podcast with your hosts, John Hoover and Philip Hernandez.
Yeah, so this week we have as our guest my cousin and also a fellow veteran, former Navy nuke, Chris Hoover.
What's up, everybody? I'm Chris.
Visiting with us. He just got back from Northern Europe. He was in the Navy from 2006
to 2014.
So you got out the year you got in the year I got out. Okay. Wow. For some reason I thought you were in it sooner.
I started school sooner.
Okay.
Yeah. 2002 I started school and then got to nuke school in 2006.
Okay. So I guess when you're in the academy, because he's a Naval Academy grad, when you're in the academy, it doesn't count as active service?
Active service. But
really?
If you, there's a couple ways to actually make the college count. I think the first one that comes to mind is NUPOC. So if you're in the NUPOC program and then go through undergrad and don't even have to do the ROTC stuff, that college time, no uniforms, no nothing, still counts as active time, I think.
Yeah, but that's because you were already active, and then you go to college, and then, right?
No, not as NUPOC. No. With NUPOC, you aren't necessarily a prior enlisted. In fact, I don't know if I know of any prior enlisted NUPOC guys.
Oh.
But they do have a really high bar for that. I mean, you have to be in a competitive engineering major with like a 3.5 or something or more to make that work. So it's a pretty small percentage of people. But yeah, so that's the NUPOC side. So that means you're not going to service academy and you're not going to ROTC. If you're going to a service academy and you're prior enlisted, then the service academy time does count as active time. So
okay.
Like your enlisted time adds to your service academy time, which adds to your commission time for a total time in service. But if you're just coming straight into the service academy, I think officially it's changed over history, but I think officially right now you're like a reservist or something. I don't count it as time serving. I was wearing a uniform every day, but I wasn't doing work. I was just studying.
Interesting. Yeah, I thought, and I didn't realize you were until 2014 either, I guess. I thought you were out sooner.
Yeah.
Further back than that, I guess. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, I did some like easier non-operational stuff towards the end to make the transition more favorable.
Okay.
Year of like power training and then 3 years on the submarine and then 2 years of diplomatic work in Europe and then 2 years of teaching ROTC at UT Austin.
Wow.
And that put me at 8.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
And then I cut the cord 100% at that point. No reserve or IRR or anything like that.
Okay. So Chris is probably the closest we've had so far to an actual not adrenaline junkie necessarily, but the most adventurous that we've had on the podcast so far. He just got back from Northern Europe where you were doing various activities up there.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, I know that I've gone on like hikes and stuff like that. We hiked down into the bottom of a waterfall before where most of us were like climbing down rocks and stuff like that with a safety line running overhead of us. And Chris jumped onto the safety line, wrapped his legs around it, and went hand over hand backwards down the safety line.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
If I had like an extra shirt or something, I would have glided down as my own zip line, but I wasn't prepared. Next time.
Yeah.
You didn't have a leather belt to wrap around and go sliding down?
I learned my lesson. I will next time for sure. Pick up a belt. Yeah, that place was a blast, and that water was so refreshing. It was like in the 60s. So it steals your breath for the first 30 seconds.
That's what you said, man. As you were swimming across this, it was a waterfall-fed valley floor lake that he swam across it, and my two brothers jumped into it on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was shockingly chilly, but.
I once jumped into 54-degree ocean water and it took my breath away. I had to put on some more hood stuff, so I can't imagine just jumping in there and staying in there.
Yeah, well, eventually your body gets numb. I really hate cold water, but sometimes I make exceptions for it. I was in South Africa and I did the cage deal with the great white sharks, and I made an exception for that cold water because the sharks were just so overwhelming, so incredible that I wanted to stay in that water for the end of time. I did do a dry suit certification, scuba certification in Italy back in 2010. And that was like around Christmas time at night. So the water was probably like in the 40s or so. And a dry suit's an interesting thing to learn for diving because it affects your buoyancy in all sorts of different ways than a normal wetsuit does. The whole like diving technique changes. But that came in handy because actually at Christmas time, when I was stationed in Italy, one of the Italian dive shops invited me to plant and decorate a Christmas tree underwater with them in the Mediterranean. So, I mean, it was, again, like 40 degrees. We were wearing like dive boots and hoods and gloves, sometimes doubled up. But we drank champagne underwater while decorating a Christmas tree. So we took bottles of champagne out of the
What?
and shook them up, and then tried to get a quick seal so we didn't get any seawater with the
wow, that's funny.
champagne.
Were you successful in avoiding the seawater?
Like 70%. Yeah, it was not a perfect attempt. But all that's to say that I have a strange relationship with cold water. I hate it, but I try to face it from time to time if it makes sense for other reasons.
Yeah, I know that some dry suits, like the older versions, sometimes the air gets trapped in your legs, and so your feet start floating up above your head. Were you able to compensate for that?
I did not have that happen to me, but I can imagine it would happen. I mean, I think it would probably be a question of if the suits fit to your body. If it was too loose, that might be likely to happen. If you had like the legs tucked into your boots and the legs were too loose. But I've only done like 2 or 3 dry suit dives, and fortunately, I lucked out in missing that complication. That would have been rough. Floating to the surface upside down, potentially too fast for your dive tables.
Yeah.
So
that would be crazy. Not only going too fast, but going upside down too fast because your legs are pulling you up.
Yes, you don't even know how quick you're going to the surface at that point. I mean, it's been 4 years or more since I've done a dry suit dive, so I'd have to review like how you would properly respond to that. I mean, I guess you'd try to like manually fluff out your legs to release that air.
Well, I think you would maintain the same buoyancy, but it would just be different parts of you floating at different heights. So I was scuba certified. I guess I still am, but a friend of mine had a dry suit, and it seemed like it was more trouble than it was worth for him.
Yeah, I mean, the suits are kind of expensive, and obviously if you get any sort of material defect in them, they lose their purpose. I mean, even like a pinhole puncture, that's not helpful. I've not found it useful. So I only did that certification because it was like one of the electives as part of the advanced open water thing. And it seemed cool. It seemed like a novelty, but I don't have a huge practical use for diving in icy water. There are some really, really cool like Nat Geo productions on that sort of thing. So like there is this really cool short story that Nat Geo produced about this Arctic diver that met on multiple consecutive days like a 12-foot leopard seal or sea lion or something like that. And I mean, these things are like small killer whales. They're violent in cases. I mean, they're should see some of the videos. But I guess this was like a mother that was not in an aggressive state and was still very curious though of the diver. And over multiple dives, so I should first mention, just like paint the picture. So they're very isolated in like very northern Atlantic area, I think. And the water is so cold that each time the diver started to dive, he would vomit multiple times underwater because the cold water was so shocking to his body.
Wow.
So he'd get in and get like through a very, very harsh acclimation process. And then over multiple encounters, this seal, the leopard seal, would find him, and for some reason thought that the diver was like an injured or uncared for juvenile leopard seal. So it would try to bring him dead fish. It would bring him live fish first, and then thought that he was so helpless that he couldn't handle live fish. So then it began to bring him dead fish.
What? That's crazy.
It's extraordinary. Yeah, there's a really great video on that. And then, you know, besides that, super cold diving. I mean, people in like Northern Ireland go surfing in the winter, but I don't think that's a dry suit situation. It's pretty niche stuff. I would agree with you, Philip, that it's usually not worth the inconvenience to do all the dry suit stuff. There's other better dives to do with less effort.
That is incredible. That he went. How many dives did it take? Well, how many dives did he do with that shark?
Yeah, I got the impression that encounter was like 2 or 3 dives, roughly, somewhere in that magnitude. Yeah, I've watched the video a few times. It pops in my head from time to time in discussions like this, and I always go back and I'm equally amazed each time I rewatch that video every year or so.
That's incredible.
Well worth it. Huh. Yeah. I mean, I understandably forget some of the really cool details that are spelled out in the story, as I think the diver narrates it himself, and he like shows some pictures and stuff.
Now, would you go dry suit diving again?
I would do it as a means to an end, but I can't imagine what end that would be. I mean, if I got to see a 12-foot leopard seal, then yeah, that would be an end through which I would go through those means. But
yeah, have to have something motivate you significantly.
Yeah, there's just so many other cool dives to do, and you're not guaranteed to see a leopard seal any more than you're guaranteed to see anything else in such a huge body of water. So yeah, it would be a very, very unique case where I would put a dry suit on again. I'm not resistant to it. I see it as a tool to do things that I don't normally need to do. I think my next dive trip will probably be to Honduras. I want to see some whale sharks. I've dove the Galapagos before, really hoping to see some whale sharks. I mean, they're like one of the unicorns of the diving world. Still haven't seen one yet, even after a week, in Ecuador. But there are good places on Utila and Roatan off the coast of Honduras to see whale sharks. I think they've been seen almost every month for the last few years. So,
do you know what depth you would need to go to see them?
Pretty recreational depths. I mean, I don't hear of anybody doing super technical certifications in order to see whale sharks. In fact, I see a lot of pictures of snorkelers swimming with whale sharks. So, I mean, I dive to 130, 135 feet at the most, and you can definitely see whale sharks shallower than that. And anytime you spend deeper, you have to spend less time there.
Well, the reason I was asking is if you used a rebreather, then you could stay down longer, but it would also shorten your depth. Maybe that would help.
That's a good thought. That also inspires in me the personal challenge of just trying to free dive it. I did that over the last few summers. I found some spring-fed Texas caves that go like 100 feet deep. So over 8 increments in 2 summers, I got down to 60 feet over a minute and a half on breath hold. And that is an extremely emotional experience in a really positive way. I find it to be meditative because you're doing lots of breathing exercises and mental relaxation exercises to begin the free dive. And then when you're in there, you're so committed. Each kick, each flip of your fins means you've got to take the same amount back in the opposite direction, with a lot of uncertainty built into that. And in this area, there were twists in a relatively narrow cave. So it probably got down to like 4 or 5 feet across in places, maybe less. And with the twists, you lose natural sunlight at about 45 feet down, if I remember correctly. I didn't free dive this past summer. So after 45 feet, the next 15 feet that I dove were just completely in the dark. So I had a dive flashlight tethered to my wrist, and it turns into a lightsaber at that point. You're in pitch dark. It was not a wide enough beam to be ideal for this. So yeah, I run into a few somewhat humbling situations past 50 feet on those dives, but I don't think anything really makes you value your life and appreciate like the complexity of nature around you, like being on a cave free dive, especially in like one of those really beautiful spring fed caves. So Mexico has lots of these. They call them cenotes. There's like over 1,000 miles in the area around Tulum and Playa del Carmen that you can cave dive. Super dangerous for as far as scuba diving. There's all these other certifications and stuff, and free divers have definitely been injured or worse. But I mean, there is a very raw primalness to freediving caves, and that's pretty cool. So I mean, I think it was between doing some sort of technology-assisted shallow water sustained dives with whale sharks and forcing myself to hold my breath. I'd go with the latter just because it would be that much more memorable.
Wow.
Did you even take
so maybe
like
we'll call you an adrenaline junkie. Maybe after all.
If even at the sacrifice of maybe my humility, I would also recommend that video. I made a video kind of restructuring, like doing a recap of that free diving down to 60 feet. You can follow my progress on this map that I made through a cave diagram on that. So I got some drone footage on that too to kind of introduce and frame the footage. So just gonna plug myself there. Check out that video. It's on YouTube.
Where can they find that? Is it Chris Hoover YouTube or?
Yeah, Chris Hoover, and then it's like 60-foot, 18-meter free dive, cave free dive. The area is Wimberley, Texas.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, and we'll make sure we drop a link for that into our webpage for the podcast too, so people can go to our podcast webpage, find that, click on it, and go to your page from there.
Excellent.
Yeah. So you were just in Northern Europe. What was going on while you were there?
I was there for about 10 days. The original point of it all was to attend my friend's wedding. One of my Navy friends from my work in Europe married a Polish girl. He had met her in Ireland. He had since moved back to Texas. She stayed in Europe. They decided to get married and do so in Poland. She is full Polish. So they had a traditional Polish wedding, which was really, really fun. I went till 4 a.m, the reception.
Wow.
A lot of dancing, a lot of vodka, really beautiful area. Everyone in Poland was super cool and fun and nice. I was there for 3 days, got to see a lot of friends from the Navy and the Marine Corps over those 3 or 4 days. And I flew to Helsinki and basically drove a loop from Helsinki all the way across Finland to the north and into northern Norway into the Arctic Circle, and then took a different loop back. So I did about 2,000 miles of driving in 4 days, which is in the upper portion of my like rate of road trip driving. Not my max, but it's up there. But it was so worth it because flying that stuff would not have allowed me to like get out of the car on the side of the highway and chase wild reindeer for photos. And
with your drone?
I didn't bring the drone on this
one. Okay.
It would have been nice too. It's a little bit bulky, the one that I have. So yeah, I've got to choose when I choose to basically double my luggage size to bring the drone. Maybe next time. But yeah, really a lot of fun time there. I think on the first day I drove 10 hours just to get to the opposite side of Finland into the Arctic Circle to see the Northern Lights, and that was very, very epic. At the time, the ideal period of the day to see the Northern Lights was about midnight to 2 a.m. So I was probably working on 2 hours of sleep, and I did 10 hours of driving, and then and recovering from that wedding. And then got there, and needed to stay up like into the night to see the Northern Lights. But all of it was extraordinarily worth it. It is true. People are skeptical of the photos that they see that the colors are enhanced. They are, but it's still very, very flooring to the naked eye to see like these morphing colored clouds come across the sky in completely unpredictable shapes at unpredictable times.
Now, what's the what's the cause of
The mechanism.
the mechanism behind it as far as interaction between, it's got to be some function of the Earth's magnetic sphere, right, and the interaction with the photons coming in, I guess, and causing them to bend in whatever direction?
Yeah, the sun emits a lot of radiation, a lot of different types of radiation. Photons are one category, electrons another type, and I think with this, it's primarily the electrons.
Okay, that makes more sense. With the magnetic, yeah, okay, that makes a lot more sense, actually. And
so they call them solar winds. I think that's kind of a misnomer because wind isn't really a factor in space, but it's shorthand. So basically, they're coming at the Earth. I mean, in some cases, I think like 1,000,000 miles an hour, and collectively are charged very highly. I mean, I had some notes in my phone. I think we were looking at like tens of thousands of volts, and 50,000 volts and 20 million amps in some places.
20 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yep. So for anybody that isn't too plugged into this field, a normal house outlet's like 15 to 30 amps and 120 volts. So, I mean, we're looking at like thousands to millions of times more. And so basically what you're seeing in the picture, if you're looking at the northern lights with the eye, you're seeing collisions of molecules in the atmosphere, the nitrogen and oxygen molecules in the atmosphere with those electrons. And the colors are, the colors are produced by, the variation in the colors is dictated by the height in the atmosphere, which is a function of like what the chemical composition is. You have more nitrogen or more oxygen at different altitudes. The orders of magnitude that we're talking about are like, I think 50 to 200 miles above the Earth's, 50 to 200 miles above the Earth's surface.
So the actual light production mechanism of that, is it the electrons interacting with molecules causing the molecules to,
I imagine, emit photons?
Right, it must be right. It must be causing them to get charged up, and they must be them dropping down to a lower energy state, I guess. And a photon can shoot off at different wavelengths based on if it's oxygen or nitrogen, maybe.
Yeah. So
maybe
the other factor there is the distance. So the longer something has to travel, the more it's shielded or scattered. And so you see that like with scuba diving, photography and scuba diving, your pictures all turn blue because the blue wavelengths are able to make it further through all the scattering and attenuation and whatnot to the camera sensor.
Okay.
Due to their frequency.
Same reason that sunlight on the horizon is red versus the sky being blue typically, because of the wavelength that can penetrate furthest in that environment, or is refracted most in that environment.
Yeah, so I mean, as a general rule, lower frequencies travel longer distances. So, where you are in the light spectrum will determine how far that color makes it to you, whether it's in the water or whether it's in the atmosphere above the Earth's surface. So I don't have the understanding of the missing link in terms of electrons colliding with oxygen and nitrogen, and how that turns into a change in visible light. I mean, it has to be photons, I think.
It's got to be emitting photons as the electrons change their energy level, right? Because that's typically, when an electron changes its energy level, you typically get a photon out of that result, right? I mean, that's how an LED works, right? LED, you apply the electric current, you get these electrons to jump up to a higher energy level. Then when it decays back down, a photon comes shooting out of it.
I think that's it. That makes sense to me. So there are a lot of factors in terms of how visible this is. Obviously, a really uninteresting but common one is cloud cover, but also the current state of the Earth's magnetic field and how active the radiation from the sun is, these sorts of things. When you add all of them up, and there are many more, it's really hard, even as like an astronomer, to predict how good the northern lights or the southern lights. These happen at both poles. There's the aurora borealis in the north pole, and then the Aurora Australis, something like that. I'm butchering it, in the South Pole. But as the magnetic poles deviate, as they change to the northern lights, along with the sun's radiation itself. So I saw them on 2 nights. I drove all the way across Finland from the very south to the very north on the first day. Saw them on the first night. I got some cool photos of that. Get those up on my Instagram. We can give a link to that if you want.
Okay,
so,
cool.
This is another interesting tangent that I've done photography for probably 5 or 6 years at varying levels of intensity, and been thinking about replacing and or upgrading my now broken DSLR. But smartphones have gone so far from where they were just a year ago. I took photos of the northern lights on my cell phone.
Wow.
And you can be the judge of how effective that was, but I took a 10-second exposure with my shoe as a tripod in windy conditions in past midnight.
Gotta do what it takes,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I like to travel light. And I mean, I think cell phone camera sensors have come a really long way.
Yeah.
So you can agree or disagree when you look at the photo, but
well, a lot of the argument is about the optics, right? And so are cell phones large enough to gather enough light with those small optics?
Yeah, there are 2 main categories of factors in terms of digital photo quality. One is the lens composition, the quality of the glass, like surely the optics, which I think is what you're talking about. And I mean, there's certainly factors in terms of like the size, like the cross section of the lens. But there are this other category of factors, sensor size, like digital sensor size. What is the photo sensor able to pick up in terms of levels of light and the range between those levels, between the darkest and the lightest, within a photo and across all photos? So there have been a lot of creative ways to improve upon that, including like adding multiple same direction facing cameras to the same phone. That adds other functionality, like being able to change focus after the photo, which is pretty incredible to a certain degree.
Huh.
I mean,
cool.
It almost adds like depth perception, basically, with your eyes. So yeah, there are all sorts of directions that photography is taking technologically, on phones or otherwise.
Well, you could probably start to do 3D at that point too. I mean, granted, it's not that far of a distance between the 2 cameras, but yeah, you'd think at that point you're starting to get some 3D perspective going on there. All kinds of cool stuff.
There was a phone that had 2 lenses on kind of separated by this amount of distance.
For those that can't see right now, that are actually listening to this, Phil's pointing to the back of his phone lengthwise.
Yeah, they're about 2 or 3 inches apart. And I had a friend who had that phone, and he started taking some photos and doing the 3D thing, and it was really difficult to get it to work well. And even when you did, you had to have that screen so that you could see it in 3D.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It just wasn't going to take off at that point.
Yeah, it's the panoramic problem, right? Like I take a panoramic picture on my phone. It looks awesome on my phone because the camera is built for the phone, and the way it takes the photo is built to match up with how the phone's going to display it. But then I share it to Facebook, for example, and it either doesn't show up right at all, and people can't see like, why is this an interesting photo, or it shows up as like a thin bar with a giant black box on top and a giant black box on the bottom.
Yeah, it's the classic technology versus business problem. Like, what do you do with the TV if there's no TV stations, or radio if no radio stations? Chicken or the egg, which comes first? And with like VR and AR and 360 and 3D, there are a bunch of stakeholders that all have to get on board at roughly the same time to make it happen. And like the YouTube and Facebook video, Instagram video, and all those things are way behind what we're able to produce in terms of what we're able to share.
Well, and I know one thing I came across a while ago is that they're now recording in higher ratio with like professional movie quality cameras. actually record at a higher ratio than what they're capable of displaying right now.
Oh, totally.
They can capture more than what they can display, which is kind of cool because it means down the road, potentially, we can actually go back and instead of like enhancing a movie that they do now, where really they're just, kind of using digital technology to improve what was there, but they're not really taking anything that's better. They can actually take the original film and really pull more information out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, right amount of money, you can buy an 8K camera.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas the only way to do that with older movies is to get the actual film that it was recorded on and then extract it from there. But even that way, the film itself was a lower quality than we need to get HD out of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I forget who it was that a while back, one of the big movie houses had to go back and start turning everything of theirs into digital because they were losing movies on old film because the film had deteriorated so much that they were literally losing pieces of film work that had been recorded at a certain point just because it was fading away and the information wasn't there anymore. It had been so long.
And it's a similar issue with CDs too, because CDs degrade over time. And so you have to, if the only copy you have of something is on a disc, and then it warps or just degrades over time, then it's gone forever.
Yeah.
Hard drives.
Backups are important. Yeah. Well, backups for the hard drive, right? Because a hard drive by itself would do that too over time. That's why you continuously have to be backing up your servers and all this stuff. But
that's why we have RAID 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But then there's also the whole question of geographic distribution of your storage so that you're not so that you are immune to physical impacts, fire, flood, all these things. Definitely.
Yeah. So you mentioned something about the car that you were driving too.
Yeah, I covered 2,000 miles in 4
This was
days.
during his trip, by the way.
Right.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, to reestablish the context, I was in Northern Europe for 10 days. First 3 were in Poland for the wedding, and then I flew to Helsinki, Finland. Drove the first day to northern Finland, so all the way south, all the way north to see the Northern Lights. And then 3 more days to the very top of Scandinavia, the very north of Scandinavia, excuse me. And then eventually I made my way down south to Helsinki again through a different route, which totaled to 2,000 miles. And I rented a pretty small SUV, but it was diesel fueled and did 50 miles to the gallon on average over 2,000 miles, going up to about 75 miles an hour, but also driving with a little bit of spiritedness on rough trail roads, starting and stopping, being in some cities as well. 50 miles to the gallon was
60 miles to the gallon.
50.
Still.
Now there is somewhat of a large amount of error in the precision with that because I get the impression this is somewhat standard there. The units that I converted from were like liters per 100 miles, I think.
Okay.
And so
it was,
so it was in the range of like, I think 5 liters per 100 miles, something like that.
Why would it was miles, not kilometers?
Sorry, kilometers.
Okay. I was wondering, why would they?
It was liters per 100 kilometers.
Okay.
Thanks. And so it was in the neighborhood of like 4.7 to 5.3, I think. And with like that low level of measurement of precision, there's a lot that's lost. So the unit conversion may not have been helpful in getting to an exact answer, but I mean, 50 miles to the gallon was about what it came out to.
Yeah, given those speeds and those conditions, still impressive.
I was starting and stopping for a lot of wild reindeer and one wild moose on the road, and doing high speeds and then doing a lot of speed changes and like trails and stuff. So it did pretty well. I mean, you don't see a lot of big trucks in Europe. See a lot in Texas and Tennessee, and
right?
And Florida. But not so much in Europe. I mean, the people that are using big trucks need them for work like every single day. It's not like the shifties. I mean, the fuel prices are by no doubt a big factor in that. I mean, you're paying like $5 to $10 per gallon equivalent in Europe.
Yeah.
And then I remember when I was stationed in Italy, there was also like a road tax for the size of my engine, for the displacement of the cylinders. So
they push towards smaller cars really hard. I know that.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're driving like a V8 or something, which is uncommon in most of Europe, then you may pay like 3 or 4 times more in road tax. So anyway, the car that I rented was like super, super reliable. And I was in 30-degree weather to see the northern lights, and it started and stopped as a diesel in super cold weather with no trouble, and hit 50 miles per gallon roughly.
That's cool.
2,000 miles.
Wow.
It's definitely impressed. It was a Mitsubishi, which is funny because I was near Germany and all of these like highly regarded engineering meccas, but it was a Japanese, I think, car that ended up doing all these things well for me. Wow.
I know that diesel engines have glow plugs, but considering where you were, it's way up there, pretty cold. I don't suppose you checked if they had heat tracing on the fuel lines themselves.
I didn't. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to know if they did that or not. Yeah. Huh.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it gets way colder there. I was there in, I guess, at the beginning of the month, so about a month ago. Beginning of September. It's the end of September now. So
I had to ask because most of my road trips do not take me into the Arctic Circle.
Right. Yeah. It would probably be a much more urgent discussion if I was there in January. I was really worried about it. Now it's curiosity. I'm definitely curious. I did own a diesel for 2 years in Italy. I had an Alfa Romeo that was turboed, but it didn't get super. I mean, I guess it snowed a couple times, but not substantial.
Tell you one thing that's gotten me thinking about diesel cars again, especially as like a next purchase, is here in Florida. So we just had Irma go through, right? And we had gas shortages during Irma, like ridiculous lines. Most gas stations not having fuel at all, at least in the Tampa area, and it pretty much extended, to my understanding, throughout most of central and southern Florida. There were gas shortages everywhere. There was still diesel all over the place. I saw lots and lots of big trucks pulling in and filling up their gas tanks on diesel pumps when nobody else could get anything else out of the gas station because nobody has diesel really. And so it made me think about, it'd be really nice to have a diesel car right now that could go and just fill this thing up wherever I want in the event of a gas shortage.
Well, you said that the tankers had to have police details to escort them over there?
Yeah, right? We were heading towards Mad Max very quickly. There are pictures of the governor actually issued an order that the police were to escort oil tankers coming down from northern Florida down into central and southern Florida to ensure that they could get down there quickly and effectively and not get stopped along the way or hassled with or whatever, get where they had to go. Yeah.
So I'm thinking that a lot of semis probably weren't going down there for deliveries, which means that there's even more diesel available. So
yeah, that was the other thing, right? Yeah, because your truck, like there wasn't anything coming down because nobody wants to come down and get stuck while they're down here. Yeah, so a couple of days before, all of a sudden you notice that there's no big trucks on the road anymore at all. Yeah.
For anybody that's not familiar and is wondering whether diesel is a short-term substitute for gasoline or vice versa, that is not the case. They operate at very different pressures. And if you or somebody else puts one that's meant to be the other in your car, it does a lot of damage to the fuel system. In Italy, the convention is for an attendant to pump your fuel for you. And if there's a communication barrier or a mishearing of what's said, then you get about €800 of damage on your fuel system and might need a new pump.
I was going to say personal experience of this one. Might have happened.
I thought my Italian was clear enough, but apparently not. And if you're in an area where the legal system is not exactly upstanding and reliable, then that makes it so very complicated. So watch out for those things.
Wow.
But diesel is a lot of fun. I mean, you don't see race cars with diesel motors, but they have a ton of torque. and unavoidably it's the acceleration that comes with that. The Alfa Romeo that I had in Italy was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Two-door hatchback with a small diesel engine and the turbo, and it sounds like a little school bus, but it moves pretty fast, slow to the ground. It's good.
That's cool.
Yeah, I've been anxious for a diesel motorcycle, but nobody's been able to produce one yet. There have been prototypes, attempts, but it's just the temperatures and that diesel requires, and the stability just isn't there for motorcycle or small engines for motorcycles.
Yeah. I know that Jeep is supposed to be bringing their diesel Wranglers from Europe over to here. Because they do produce diesel Wranglers, they're just not available in the United States.
That's impressive, because there are some pickup trucks that we were using on site in Africa that were diesel and got like 50 miles per gallon, but the company was not allowed to export them to the U.S. So I wonder.
My friend that got married in Poland has a diesel Jeep Liberty in Texas. So
nice.
I don't know. I mean, if you are able to import things between overseas and the States, case by case, usually it's pretty expensive.
Yeah, it's real complicated real quick.
There's always the possibility of dismantling the vehicle to the point that it's no longer called a vehicle and then reassembling it and shipping it as parts.
Technically, Ducati does sell their motorcycles in pieces as kits that you can ship over here and then build it yourself.
Yeah, I know for a fact that there are companies that will import completed products, completed manufactured, like not for vehicles, but for other products. They get them here, they dismantle them and put them back together, because then it becomes an American-made product instead of an import product. It's the craziest thing. It's not the craziest thing I've ever heard, but it's pretty crazy as far as things go.
There are still differences in emission standards, like state inspection, so you still may have to do some
sulfur levels, right, for diesel, I think is a big concern. Right, I think we have sulfur standards here that are maybe a little bit higher than some places, I think. But yeah, cool, man.
There are electric motorcycles that are in production. Oddly, Harley is prototyped a few. Kind of outside their core
business. Does seem outside their core business. Yeah, it doesn't seem to match your demographic real well.
I think one of the Japanese companies definitely did. It might have been Yamaha. I can't remember. The whole diesel culture is an interesting one. I mean, you can see like a lot of people posting videos on YouTube of drag racing diesel trucks that come off the line pretty fast, and like one-on-one towing competition. Tie the trailer hitches.
Yep.
Who loses the tug of war?
Who destroys their truck first? Yeah.
So that was a fun aspect, driving that car around Scandinavia. Another cool feature was that I ran. I think the second to last place that I stayed in. There was a hotel that was like 95% automated, like humanless. So they had housekeepers that were flesh and blood, but everything else was automated. So you like got an entry pin and access code for the main guest lobby and for the elevator and for your room, and everything involving the check-in was just entry of those codes.
Wow.
And there were 0 employees at the hotel for 22 hours a day.
Interesting.
I've actually spent a few too many hours at night just thinking about that idea, but there's so much that you have to put into it, from the door locks to the website to the Wi-Fi, setting up separate systems for everybody, tracking all the utilities usage for each person, depending on whether it's just a hotel or an apartment. It's just
right.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of overhead in the setup, but once you get there, once you have that automated, it's more doable. This was a prototype hotel kind of for demonstration to investors. I mean, it was operational, but that was the main purpose of it. The other cool feature of it was that the physical construction of the building itself was very modularized. So basically, each room was like, this is Sweden, so it was basically like little IKEA rooms. Each room was like half of a shipping container. like literally. So they like stacked, finished, furnished, somewhat electrically wired, mostly plumbing fitted shipping containers by crane on top of each other to form this.
Really? And then just link them together.
Yeah.
But those are only 8 feet wide by, I think, 40 feet length at the most.
It's funny to think that the country where IKEA came from looks like IKEA basically.
Yeah. It really does.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
But yeah, you're right, Philip. I mean, it was a nice room, but I mean, I could reach the bed, the TV, the shower, the toilet, and the closet without moving. It was really nice. It was modern and had everything I needed, but there was just like one place to stand, and everything else was in like a step from that.
So, do you think it would be okay for short stays, but long stays would not be terribly feasible?
It depends on who you are,
yeah.
what you're used to. I mean, if you live in Japan, your house or your apartment's probably already like that. Maybe some places in Sweden, I would imagine, if that's how IKEA is. I don't know. I haven't lived in Sweden.
Your personal preference. I mean, do you think you could do that for a while, or?
I mean, I did it on a submarine for 3 years, so yeah. Probably not by preference, though. I mean, I live in a somewhat small condo, 800 square feet, but I would prefer to have more than like a 8 by 20 foot, so 8 by 15 foot room for everything. That's a little bit.
I've tried having small places before, and what I find is that if I have a small place, I don't spend any time in my small place. I end up spending the money that I would save on the small place being outside the small place.
Yeah, which has its pros and cons, because it's easy to get distracted at home, like watching TV when you think you should be catching up on work. So if you get pushed out of your house, it's possible you might be a little bit more productive. I think it varies really widely by person.
Yeah. Cool.
I've seen some stories about Japanese businessmen who sleep in the city because it's too far to go back and forth to their home. And some of them only have this. It looks like basically a coffin that you slide into, and
board,
it's
right.
Yeah.
What?
And then you just close the curtains or something, and you've got almost everything you need in there. And then you get out.
Bodies on trays.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's great. Have you seen The Fifth Element, where they slide into their rooms?
Yep.
It's almost the exact same thing.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
I tried it once.
Well, I think it's probably good. What do you think, Phil? We burned about almost an hour here.
Oh, already? Holy shit.
Yeah, I think so. I'm at
106.
Yeah, so I think we started at like 12:20 or something like that. So that's 45 minutes already.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, so that'll probably work. Cool.
Hey,
and
thanks for being on here, Chris.
Family and all that stuff. So yeah, cool, man.
Absolutely. I
Chris,
give you some links. I'll send you those.
Yeah, Chris, we really appreciate you coming on. Yeah, definitely. Cool stuff, and we'll have to have you again at some point.
It's a pleasure. You have to be back. Thanks.
Yeah. So see you later, Phil. We're gonna go back and drink some more beers with family.
Sounds good.
Later, man.
Adios.
Bye.